Four friends entered the Grand Canyon on what they believed would be the greatest adventure of their lives. Only one of them returned, 7 years later, barefoot and broken, whispering that the others were still out there. Before the storm that erased their campsite, there were photographs of laughter, drone footage of sunsets, and a sketchbook filled with drawings of stone and sky. After the storm, there were only scattered belongings, strange carvings deep in the rocks, and rumors of a hidden community that lived in the shadows of the canyon. When Tyler Monroe staggered back into the world, his body carried the scars of years spent surviving, and his words carried something darker. A warning about faces in the cliffs, voices in the dark, and a man named Abram who promised salvation. In the depths of the earth, is Tyler a victim who endured the impossible, or was he hiding the truth about what happened to Emily, Jason, and Sarah? And why did Jason's journal, found years later, end with a single word carved into the page? With trembling hands stay? Who really claimed the lives of the three missing friends? And what secret does the Grand Canyon still keep hidden beneath its ancient silence? If you want to uncover the answers to these questions, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, Unscripted Tales. Let us complete 5,000 likes on this story, so that every layer of this mystery can be revealed. Emily had been the spark from the very beginning. Her restless energy and her love for chasing untold stories made her dream of the canyon irresistible. She spoke of it as freedom, away from screens, obligations, and the noise of city life. Tyler, her boyfriend, felt the same pull, but in a different way. To him, the canyon was a crucible, a chance to prove himself as a wilderness guide who could read the land as easily as a book. Jason resisted at first, buried in his graduate studies, his world bound by numbers and deadlines. But Emily's determination broke through his reluctance. Sarah, quiet and thoughtful, needed no convincing. For her, the canyon was not escape but inspiration, a chance to fill her sketchbook with colors older than history. Different as they were, Emily's vision pulled them together. They were four young friends standing at the edge of something vast, certain that nothing could break them. But the canyon had other plans, the plan that began as a spark in Emily's. Mine soon grew into a mission that consumed all four of them. Every detail was considered with care, because Emily insisted that if they were going off the grid, they needed to do it right. Freeze-dried meals filled their packs, water filters were tested again and again, and headlamps with fresh batteries were tucked into side pockets. Emily spread out the maps across her desk, her handwriting circling water sources and hidden routes, tracing paths that promised both danger and beauty. She believed in preparation, but more than that, she believed in the story they would create together. Tyler studied the same maps with a different eye. Where Emily saw adventure, he saw survival. He packed rope, extra flint, and most importantly, a satellite phone. They all agreed it would stave off unless life or death demanded it. But Tyler carried it anyway, a silent promise to their families that he could bring them back safely. Jason brought something no one else thought they needed, a drone, claimed. It was for documenting their journey, but in truth, he wanted proof. Something to hold against Emily's endless energy and his own doubts. Sarah, true to herself, carried the lightest pack. Nestled inside was her sketchbook, pencils wrapped in cloth, and the belief that she would capture the canyon in ways no camera ever could. When the morning finally arrived, the four of them left behind the world of city streets and glowing screens. They drove east in a rented van, laughing through the exhaustion of a long night spent packing. At the final stop, in the pale light of dawn, they snapped photos with steaming cups of gas station coffee balanced on the hood.
Ellie
Posted one. Last time before service vanished, her caption simple but filled with promise. Into the wild, Grand Canyon bound. The ranger who saw them at the trailhead remembered their laughter, their youth, and how Tyler waved off the suggestion of an extra permit while Emily peppered him with questions about local legends. Before they stepped onto the trail, they signed a logbook with 4 names that would later become part of a mystery. Emily Chen, Tyler Monroe, Jason Patel. Sarah Vance. Under expected return, Emily scribbled July 12th, give or take. The canyon stretched before them, ancient and indifferent, while their families believed they were only beginning the trip of a lifetime. None of them could have known that the signatures they left behind in that logbook would one day be circled by strangers searching for meaning in fading ink. They walked into silence, carrying laughter, dreams, and a sense of invincibility. But the canyon was already watching. The first steps onto the trail felt light, filled with laughter that echoed against the stone walls. At the rim, the air still carried the sound of car doors and tourists calling to each other. But as the group moved forward, those noises faded until there was only silence and the crunch of their boots on gravel. They chose a route that wound away from the known paths, a trail untouched by cameras and travel blogs, the kind of path Emily insisted would make their journey unique. The farther they went, the more the canyon seemed to swallow them whole. Tyler led the way with steady confidence, pointing out lizards that darted across the rocks, desert primrose blooming in small bursts of color, and the sharp call of a falcon. Far overhead, he carried himself like he belonged there, calm and grounded. Behind him, Emily darted from ledge to ledge, chasing the perfect shot. Balancing her camera in risky spots where the drop below looked endless. Jason, carrying more worry than wonder, checked his weather app until the signal bars disappeared. Muttering about clouds and the risk of storms, his doubts were constant, but he still pressed forward, pulled along by the group. Sarah trailed quietly at the back, sketchbook under her arm. Pausing to capture the sharp edge of a cliff or the way light bent across the stone, she spoke little, but the soft scratch of her pencil told its own story. By dusk, they found a sheltered cove where the rock walls bent inward, offering just enough protection from the wind. The camp came alive with small sounds of routine, the flap of the tent, the rustle of food packets, Jason cursing softly at the portable stove, while Emily teased him and recorded the moment. Tyler worked at the tarp, glancing often at the horizon, where clouds had begun to gather. Sarah sat cross-legged near the fire pit, sketching the glow of fading sunlight on the canyon walls. Jason sent his drone into the air, capturing wide shots of the four of them silhouetted against the burning sky. In the final frame, Emily waved up at the camera, laughing. While Tyler secured the tent poles with practiced hands, the clouds thickened overhead, darker and heavier than Jason had predicted, but none of them let the unease show. They told stories. Instead, shared snacks, and let themselves believe that the storm would pass. The fire crackled, their laughter carried into the night air, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside no longer existed. But the canyon does not always warn before it changes, and that night, the clouds carried more than rain. The night that had begun with laughter shifted in an instant. A few drops at first, soft against the canvas of the tent, then a sudden rush that turned the canyon floor into a riverbed. Tyler's calm voice was swallowed by the crash of thunder. Jason's muttered worry broke into panic, and Emily's last. Video caught only blurred streaks of water, her laughter tangled with fear before the storm consumed everything. Sarah's sketchbook lay open on her lap until the wind tore at its pages, her pencil scratching frantically at lines she would never finish. The canyon transformed under the storm's weight. Water roared through the dry washes, carrying sand and stone with violent force. Hard ground turned to slick mud, slopes became traps, and every gust of wind slammed into their fragile camp. The tarp snapped loose, the tent bent under the pounding rain, and the sound of their voices was lost to the storm. When rangers arrived 3 days later, they found only ruins. A tent slashed and collapsed, poles broken like brittle sticks, sleeping bags soaked and half buried in silt. Backpacks spilled open, gear scattered across the ground as if torn apart by unseen hands. Emily's camera was cracked where it had fallen. Jason's drone lay silent in the mud, its battery drained. Sarah's sketchbook, damp and curling at the edges, held faint sketches of their last day together. A ridgeline at dusk. Tyler's unfinished profile. Emily caught mid-laugh, but no drawings of the storm that had stolen them. What unsettled the searchers most was not what remained, but what was missing. No footprints, no drag marks, no sign of retreat. The rain had come fast and hard, yet the ground around the camp should have held something, a trace of panic, a path leading away. Instead, the site felt abandoned, as if the storm had erased not only their presence, but their very existence. By the end of that day, their names were carried over radios, maps were spread across truck hoods, and families stood at the rim staring into the silence below. Helicopters prepared to sweep the sky, dog teams pressed noses to clothing left behind, and boats patrolled the Colorado River. What began as a simple search for lost hikers was already becoming something else. Something that would grip not only the canyon but the world beyond it. The silence of the desert was about to be broken by urgency. By lights in the night and by voices desperate to find what the canyon refused to return. The quiet of the canyon was soon shattered by the sound of helicopter blades slicing through the sky. Search teams moved across ridges with ropes and harnesses. Climbers descended into narrow chasms where sunlight barely touched. And river patrols scanned every bend of the Colorado for any sign of life. Dogs whined and pawed at the ground as they circled the abandoned campsite, catching scents that led nowhere. Radios crackled with clipped updates, maps spread wide across truck hoods at the rim, and every eye was drawn to the endless stone maze that seemed determined to keep its secrets. Families arrived before dawn, their faces pale with exhaustion and hope that burned through the fear. Emily's mother clutched a tissue in her trembling hand, whispering again and again that her daughter was probably walking out of the canyon that very moment. Jason's father held his son's water bottle so tightly his knuckles turned white, staring into the canyon as if he could summon him back with will alone. Tyler's parents stood arm in arm, shifting between silent prayers and sharp questions for the rangers. Sarah's parents moved quietly, eyes hollow, speaking little as they clung to each other. Their grief spilled out into the open, every glance, and every word a plea for answers. The media descended quickly. Porters lined the rim with cameras pointed at the vast expanse of stone, narrating the unfolding mystery in practiced voices. Photographs of the four friends, smiling at the trailhead only days earlier, flashed across screens across the country. Anchors described them as bright students, young lives full of promise, now swallowed by the silence of the canyon. The search had become more than a local rescue. It was a story carried into living rooms everywhere. Yet despite the urgency, despite the floodlights cutting into the night and the hours of searching across ledges and rivers, the canyon gave back almost nothing. A sandal found near a wash. The torn corner of a hoodie caught on the branch of a mesquite tree. Scrap of fabric carried downstream, colors faded by the water. Each discovery raised hope for only a moment before the weight of the unanswered grew heavier. No bodies, no clear trail, nothing that could tell the families what had truly happened. Every day stretched longer, every night colder, as the search pressed deeper into the labyrinth. The canyon seemed to resist, swallowing the shouts of rescuers erasing footprints as quickly as they were made. It was not only a search for the missing anymore. It was a battle against a place that refused to surrender what it had taken. And as the days wore on with no answers, whispers began to rise, whispers that the canyon was not the only force holding on to its secrets. As the days passed, and the canyon gave back nothing but scraps of fabric and fragments of belongings, the silence began to fill with speculation. At first, the simplest answer was spoken aloud. Perhaps they had slipped while hiking near the narrow ledges. A single wrong step on loose shale could have sent them falling into the depths below. It was a theory that made sense, yet it faltered. Against one haunting truth, they had fallen. Where were their bodies? Search teams had combed every cliff and shadow with ropes and drones, but the canyon revealed nothing. The second explanation came soon after. Some whispered about wild animals, a mountain lion, a bear, a predator that had attacked in the chaos of the storm. But experts dismissed the idea. There were no tracks, no blood, no drag marks, nothing that pointed to such an attack. Never erased their trail so cleanly. The theories grew darker as frustration mounted. Foul play entered the conversation. Maybe a stranger had found their camp in the storm. someone who slipped in under cover of night and left no witnesses. Or worse, maybe the danger had come from inside the group itself. Emily's ambition, Tyler's intensity, Jason's nervous, doubts, Sarah's silence. Tension could have built into something unthinkable. Families flinched at the suggestion, but the possibility was raised all the same. Then came the whispers that unsettled everyone most of all, stories of hidden communities. In the canyon, groups who lived off the grid, unseen by tourists and rangers, people who believed the canyon was sacred ground and did not take kindly to outsiders. Locals called them the Keepers. Tales spread of hikers who vanished only to be glimpsed months later, pale and hollow-eyed, walking the ridges like shadows. It sounded like legend, yet the timing was too sharp. The silence too complete for families not to wonder if something human and hidden had played a role in the disappearance. Media fanned the flames. News anchors leaned into the mystery, telling audiences about accidents, predators, murder, and cults. The families once united began to divide. Emily's mother clung to hope, insisting they were alive somewhere. While Jason's father grew bitter and demanded answers the rangers could not provide. At the edge of the canyon, reporters captured every word, every crack in their voices, every moment of despair. With every passing day, frustration turned into anger. Questions about the search efforts, about what was being missed, about whether the truth was being buried beneath official reports echoed louder. The canyon had swallowed the four friends, but it had also unleashed something else. A storm of suspicion and rumor that no one could contain. And then, when almost everyone had given up hope, a figure would appear from the wilderness, barefoot and broken, claiming to be one of the missing. 7 years had passed since the canyon, swallowed for young friends, leaving only scattered belongings and endless silence. The story had faded from news headlines, the vigils had grown smaller, and most people had accepted the mystery as unsolved. But then, on a pale morning at the Bright Angel Ranger Station, the impossible happened. The door opened, and a man staggered inside. He was barefoot, his jeans torn into shreds, his skin darkened and cracked by years under the sun. His hair hung, long and tangled, and a matted beard framed a face that looked more like bone than flesh. For a moment, the room froze, Rangers staring in disbelief as he swayed in the doorway. His eyes drifted to a faded poster on the wall, a photograph of for smiling faces taken at the trailhead so many years before. His mouth moved, his voice dry and broken. "That is me," he rasped. "I am Tyler Monroe." The words struck like a thunderclap. Before anyone could react, his knees buckled and he collapsed to the floor. Medics rushed forward, lifting him onto a cot, pressing water to his lips, but even then, he flinched at every touch, his eyes darting toward the window as if expecting something to follow him. With what little strength he had left, he whispered one chilling sentence: "They are still out there. You do not understand. Should not have come back." At Flagstaff Medical Center, doctors were unprepared for what they found. Once Tyler's body bore the marks of survival stretched across years, his ribs jutted sharp beneath his skin, his muscles wasted away. Yet his feet were calloused so thick they looked like armor, cracked and healed over again and again. His hands were scarred, his fingertips worn flat as if turned into tools. Teeth were dulled, his gums receded from grit and stone. This was not the body of a man who had collapsed after days lost in the wild. This was the body of someone who had endured years of harsh survival, a life lived without shelter, without comfort, without rest. But what struck the doctors most was his mind. Tyler drifted in and out of consciousness, flinching at shadows that no one else saw. When nurses tried to soothe him, he recoiled as though hands were chains. He muttered names under his breath: Emily, Jason, Sarah, over and over, as if they were still walking behind him. And sometimes his voice dropped low, whispering fragments that chilled the room. They are still there. They are still watching. Everyone expected relief when Tyler returned, but what he brought back was something far darker. Survival was not an ending. It was the opening of a door no one had been ready to face, and when investigators finally sat by his bed to ask where he had been all those years, The story he gave would shake everything the families thought they knew. When Tyler Monroe's strength returned enough for him to sit upright in his hospital bed, the investigators finally stepped forward. A detective placed a recorder on the table, and 2 federal agents stood silently against the wall. They spoke gently at first, asking where he had been, how he had survived, what had happened to the others. For a long time, Tyler only twisted, the blanket in his hands, his eyes flicking toward the window, as if the canyon itself could hear. Then slowly, the words began to spill out. "There was a cave," he whispered, "one that did not appear on maps, hidden behind rock falls and dry riverbeds, where no tourist would ever think to go." At first they thought they had found shelter. The air inside was cool and damp, a relief from the heat above. But it was not empty. People were there, watching them, faces pale in the firelight, clothes torn and dirt-covered, eyes dark and unblinking. Tyler said they had been observed for days before anything happened. Shapes lingered. At the edges of camp, voices whispered in the night. And then Sarah was gone. He told them that Sarah was the first to disappear. She had wandered toward the sound of singing, her curiosity pulling her away, and she never came back. Jason wanted to search for her, but Tyler held him back, fearing what they could not see. Emily launched her drone into the night sky, its buzz echoing against the cliffs, desperate for a sign of their friend, but it found nothing. As darkness fell, the watchers stepped from the shadows. Thin figures, their faces painted white with ash, moving silently along the cliffs. They came closer, and one by one, the friends vanished. Jason's voice was the next to disappear into the silence, cut short by a muffled shout. Emily fought harder, screaming Tyler's name, clawing against hands that dragged her back until she too was gone. And then Tyler spoke the name that made every investigator in the room lean closer. Abram. He said Abram was their leader. A man who called himself the voice of the canyon, who preached that the world above was poisoned and only those who surrendered to the stone could be saved. Abram touched their foreheads, whispered in their ears, told them to shed their names, their past, their very selves. Some resisted, but resistance only made them suffer more. When asked how he had escaped, Tyler's eyes filled with something. Between fear and shame, he did not fight his way free, he said. They let him go. Abram told him he was ready, that he could walk between 2 worlds, that he was no longer lost but chosen. Tyler shook as he spoke, his voice cracking. I did not escape, he murmured. They released me. The agents exchanged glances. The detective's pen paused mid-note. Tyler's words had opened a door to something far beyond a missing person case. Something hidden in the depths of the canyon that no one wanted to believe. And soon, rangers would return to the very places Tyler described, searching for proof of his story. And what they uncovered would only deepen the mystery. Tyler's testimony sent ripples through every agency involved. His words were fragile, tangled with trauma, but they carried details too precise to ignore. Rangers, climbers, and federal agents prepared once again, this time guided by the landmarks he described. A rock shaped like a skull, a collapsed wash, a narrow pass that swallowed sound. With maps marked and radios charged, they descended into the canyon, retracing steps that had remained untouched for 7 long years. The first days of the renewed search yielded almost nothing. It shimmered off the stone. Radios crackled faintly. And nerves wore thin as the canyon closed its throat around them. But then, deep inside a narrow tunnel, a ranger crawling through tight stone caught sight of a glint. Wedged between the rocks was a small silver bracelet, its clasp still intact, its inside engraved with initials and a date. It was Emily's, not torn, not broken, but resting there as if placed deliberately. The search pushed deeper with urgency. Now, each discovery feeding both hope and dread. Near a hollow hidden beneath silt, they uncovered a canvas bag. Inside were a cracked water bottle, colored pencils wrapped in cloth, and a sketchbook whose pages had melted together from damp. Sarah's belongings. Her world of lines and colors reduced to fragments. But the most haunting discovery came at dusk on the 6th day. Behind a fallen slab of rock half buried in dust, they found a leather-bound journal. the strap stretched. The pages swollen from years of water damage, yet still intact. It belonged to Jason. Investigators dried it carefully, page by page. Reading through entries that began with small notes about weather, birds, and quiet observations of the group, his words shifted slowly, drifting into unease. He wrote of feeling watched, of seeing shapes at the edge of their firelight. He recorded dreams filled with a voice beneath the stone, a sound soft and persistent, as though calling them deeper. He noted Sarah, drawing circles in the sand, Emily restless, Tyler insisting they stay calm, and then came the name, Abram. Jason described him as tall, quiet, always watching. He wrote that Abram told them they were part of something larger, that they had been chosen. The final pages grew frantic. Jason's handwriting pressed tight into margins, words breaking into fragments. They are in the caves. They are not animals. They are not like us. Emily wants to leave. Sarah does not speak. Tyler says, hold on. Abram says, we belong. The very last entry was almost unreadable. The ink smeared by water and the force of the pen tearing into paper. A single word written again and again. Stay. When the journal was shown to the families, it broke whatever fragile unity remained. Between them, some clutched it as proof of the suffering their children endured. Others looked at Tyler with suspicion, convinced he was not telling the whole truth. Reporters seized on every page, twisting the story further into legend and through it all, Tyler sat silent in his hospital bed, eyes fixed on the window, whispering only that they should not go back. That digging deeper would wake something that was never meant to be disturbed. But the canyon had already begun to give back its pieces. And soon the focus would turn from survival to suspicion, as everyone questioned what role Tyler truly played in the fate of his friends. The discovery of Jason's journal tore through the fragile hope that had held the families together. The early pages showed laughter and ordinary moments, but the later ones spoke of paranoia, of strange voices, of Abram's presence, and of Tyler's insistence to hold on when the others were crumbling. For some, the journal was proof of their children's suffering. For others, it raised darker questions about the one who had returned. Emily's mother clutched the journal to her chest during a press conference, her eyes swollen from crying, whispering that her daughter had been terrified, and that Tyler must know more than he admitted. Jason's father grew sharper in his words, declaring that Tyler had survived while his son had vanished, and survival did not come without choices. Across the room, Sarah's mother shook her head, her voice breaking as she said Tyler was a victim too, a man broken by the same darkness that had taken her daughter. The unity that had once bound the families fractured into suspicion and anger. The investigators felt the same divide. Some believed Tyler's story of a hidden community, of Abram, of caves filled with chanting voices. But others questioned every detail. Why had he been released when the others had not? Did his account shift between clarity and confusion? Why did he avoid certain questions, retreating into silence or whispers when pressed? In closed rooms, agents began to speak of the possibility that Tyler was not simply a victim, but that he carried guilt of his own. Inside the hospital, Tyler's mind was a battlefield. He whispered names in the dark, his fists clenched against. Dreams that pulled him back into stone corridors and firelit chambers. He muttered to himself about Sarah's wide eyes, Jason's fading laughter, Emily's final scream. To the nurses, he looked like a man haunted. To the investigators, he looked like someone guarding secrets too heavy to speak. He hated the word survivor. He despised being called a miracle. In his chest, every heartbeat felt like an accusation. The canyon had taken 3 lives and left 1 man standing. But now, the question that lingered louder than all others was this. Was Tyler truly the lone victim of an unimaginable ordeal? Or was he hiding the truth about what really happened in the depths of the canyon? The renewed search pushed into the deepest corners of the canyon, but no bodies were ever found. Helicopters swept the skies, climbers traced every ledge, and dogs pressed their noses into cracks of stone. Yet the canyon gave back only fragments, never the whole truth. A bracelet, a journal, a bag of pencils. Objects that told pieces of the story, but never completed it. The vast silence of the Grand Canyon remained unbroken. As if it had swallowed the four friends and chosen to keep its secrets buried in stone. For the families, hope turned into exhaustion, and exhaustion hardened into grief. Some clung to belief that their children still lived somewhere beyond the reach of the searchlights. Others accepted the canyon had claimed them. The arguments between them never stopped, because without bodies there could be no closure, only endless questions. In the towns near the rim, the story twisted into legend. Hikers whispered of hearing laughter carried on the wind at dusk. Some swore they saw shapes moving along the cliffs, too tall, too thin, too still to be ordinary people. Campfire tales grew of voices that sang through the stone, of fires that burned in caves only to vanish when approached. The canyon became more than a place of beauty and danger. It became a place of fear, mystery, and myth. And at the center of it all was Tyler. To some, he was a miracle who had endured what no one else could. To others, he was a man who knew more than he admitted. A survivor weighed down by guilt that ran deeper than trauma. He wandered between those identities, never fully either, haunted by the names of the friends who never returned. The canyon had taken what it wanted, and in return, it had left only silence, suspicion, and a story that refused to end. In a place as ancient as the Grand Canyon, the line between wonder and terror is thinner than anyone wants to believe. And sometimes it is not what the canyon swallows that frightens most. It is what it chooses to give back. The story of Emily, Jason, Sarah, and Tyler never truly ended. The canyon held on to 3 of them and returned only one, and even he was not whole. Tyler's return brought answers that only created more questions. His testimony revealed shadows of a hidden community, whispers of a man named Abram, rituals carved into the stone, and a warning that those who vanished were still there. But without bodies, without undeniable proof, the truth remained buried. Deep within the canyon, the Grand Canyon itself seemed almost alive, ancient and unbothered, keeping its secrets in silence. It gave fragments back when it wished an old bracelet, a broken camera, a sketchbook blurred with rain, but it never returned what mattered most. It was as if the canyon wanted to remind everyone that it does not belong to people. It belongs to time, to silence, to the shadows that walk its depths unseen. To stand at the rim is to see beauty beyond words. But to step inside is to feel something else, something colder. Wonder and terror live side by side in that stone labyrinth. The same walls that glow gold at sunrise can turn into tombs at night. The same silence that feels peaceful can become unbearable when it swallows the sound of your own voice. Those who survive its depths never return untouched. Because the canyon does not give back without leaving something behind. For the family's grief never faded. For the investigators, theories replaced answers. For the hikers, legends grew. And for Tyler, the canyon never released its hold. He had walked out alive, but part of him remained buried in the stone forever. The mystery of what truly happened to Emily, Jason, and Sarah is still unsolved. Some believe in accidents, others in something darker. But one truth lingers above all: the canyon chooses. It takes what it wants, and it gives only what it decides. Sometimes what it gives back is far more haunting than what it keeps. If you are still here watching this story, it means this tale has reached you, and I believe it deserves your like and subscribe. Please help me complete 1,000 likes on this story, because this is a target set for my mother, and I cannot do it without you. Tell me in the comments from which city and country are you watching this story.